We are live.
A very good morning to everyone present here. I am Moli Ghosh and I take this privilege to extend a very warm welcome to all the delegates, respective chairpersons, and our special guests to the 10th edition of NITMUN. NITMUN is by far one of the largest forums in Eastern India organized for and by the youth. It is one of the most prestigious model United Nations of the country and is a showcase of what the youth can achieve. With three committees, 120 plus delegates, and 2 days full of debates and deliberations, I hope you all will have a very enjoyable and competitive committee. It's my utmost pleasure to introduce you to the three committees for this year's conference, along with their illustrious executive board members. Firstly, we have Mr. Adhiraj Gupta and Mr. Shaunak Sarkar for the historical All India Political Parties meet with the agenda to discuss the 1975 National Emergencies implication on liberties and democracy and devising a strategy to lift India out of turmoil. Then we have Mr. Chahat and Mr. Rohan Patra for the United Nations Security Council with the agenda to deliberate upon the ongoing territorial disputes in the Russo Ukrainian region with special emphasis on de escalating tensions in the region. And finally, we have Mr. Prathit Singh and Mr. Prachideep Dasgupta for the United Nations General Assembly with the agenda to discuss foreign intervention in the Afghan crisis with special emphasis on peace, security, and welfare of the refugees in the region. We would like to thank all our executive board members for accepting our invitation for chairing NITMUN 10. We all have seen how the Taliban's returning to power in Afghanistan have forced millions of people to flee from their homeland and made their lives miserable. So, to address the issues faced by refugees all over the globe and to talk about refugee protection and solution, we are humbled to have Mr. Kiri Atri, Assistant External Relations Officer at UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, to Netman 10 as our guest speaker. With over 7 years of experience, Mr. Kiri is an experienced peace, political, and humanitarian worker with a demonstrated history of working in the international organization. He is here to enlighten us with his UNHCR experience over the past 7 years and make us aware of how the real world problems are solved in the UN. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Molly, for that introduction. Uh, it's a very humbling experience to be here. And I'm very glad the kind of topics you have chosen are very contemporary. And congratulations to all the organizers for hosting this session. As you rightly put, I would quote that. I mean, like addressing the real world problems. I think when you see in general what are the real world problems, you would say like those are climate change, those are conflicts, those are space issues. The whole conflict, the oceans, your oceans being polluted by plastics, or the melting of the ice, or increased disasters, or climate change related disasters, and all these issues, all these issues which we are faced with, or whether it's pandemic, whether it's a COVID pandemic. At the heart of all these issues are people. At the heart of all these issues are planet. And the heart of all these issues are species, who gets ultimately impacted by all these issues.
Sir, is it fine now?
Sorry, I had the real world problem where the electricity went away.
Oh,
so, so I'm connected through my hotspot. So I'm just going to turn off my video just to conserve my bandwidth.
sure, sir.
So I was saying, like, when any kind of conflict takes place, there are some kind of damages is uh, which is afflicted, which impacts the people in general. The who makes up these people? They're women, they're children, they're families, they're persons with disability. There are children who are pursuing their schools, youth who are pursuing their education, families who are trying to make a life. Conflicts suddenly disrupts all of this. And what it leads to displacement in the nature of forced displacement, because people don't have a choice. When your house is bombed, or where a conflict breaks out just outside your home, you don't choose. You have no choice but to leave that place and seek safety. When such a scenario happens, you're actually talking about a forced displacement setting. And when that kind of a displacement is within your own country, within the international borders, it is a situation of IDPs, which is commonly called as internally displaced people. And technically, here, who's responsible for the protection and assistance of IDP is the state, because they are your own people, they are your own nationals, they are just displaced. However, there are some group of people who are unable to find protection and safety within their own state and are compelled to leave their countries. They cross international borders and they come into a different country. This category of people is called refugees. And it's very important to draw a distinction between refugees and migrants, because both of them are moving. And in today's scenario, you should be, I think, in one of your committees should discuss about the issues of mixed migrations. Now, what is mixed migration is where people with different kind of issues, where people with different kind of intentions move. And why that movement happened is for various reasons. Refugees move to save their lives. Migrants move to find a better opportunity, a better life. There are people who may be trafficked within that movement. There are people who may be smuggled within that movement. So it's very, very essential to break down those kind of mixed migration and identify the people who are in real need of protection and provide them as such. And why I emphasize on that point more and more is that because of an increasing phenomena of closing one's border, you would observe many, many countries around the world. The first response to any kind of displacement is to close border. Closing your border in effect means actually not allowing people to seek safety. It's as equal to basically being okay with the fact that it's fine people die in their country. So one needs to also debate and discuss about the issue of whole access to the territory. Access to the territory is the key to access to asylum, because if you're not able to cross that border, if you're not able to seek safety, if you're not able to find protection on the other safe territory, how can you even put forward your claim to be a refugee? So another issue which you should debate during your MUNs today is basically the whole issue of asylum seekers' access to territory. The next thing which you should also be, I think, debating and should be aware about is the whole definitional issue around asylum seekers and refugees. A lot of places you will read that a person is an asylum seeker, then the person is a refugee. Are these two different people? No, they're same people. So an asylum seeker is a person who basically moves out of his country and has a claim that his life is in danger or her life is in danger, and she or he would like to seek the safety of the other country. Once that claim is made to any authority, there can be any authority in that country determining whether your claim is authentic or whether it's substantial or not. And once that claim is found to be true, when your claim is found to be correct, that you really have a real danger, you have a real risk to your life if you are not allowed to seek asylum, Then you declare that person to be a refugee. And I use the word declaration because that process does not create a person as a refugee. A person is created as a refugee by the wars, not by the processes. So it's a declaratory nature. It's a status which is endowed upon them. And with that kind of a status, there are a lot of rights and responsibility that a refugee has access to. Now, what are those rights and responsibility? Is something you need to also debate on, because those rights and responsibilities are coming increasingly under attack from across the world. People do not want the rights of the refugees to be recognized, or would have a very constrained or tolerated approach to the recognition of their rights. So it is very important to understand that if you do not have effective access to the right, how are you going to survive? Is it dignified to live when your children cannot go to school? You have no right to work. You cannot earn any livelihood. Eventually, you will become you will slip into being in a situation of extreme poverty. You would lose your skills. Youth and children are going to lose their future. So when you debate and discuss about those issues of the duties or responsibilities or the rights of refugees, think about the human cost you're talking about. When there's no right to work, what does it imply for a family? When there is no right to education for a refugee child, what does it imply? Classic situations where a lot of people were alarmed were the lost generation of Syria. 5 years of war means you have an entire generation who did not go to primary school. 10 years of war, you have an entire education which missed out of school. And if your children and youth are not educated, then your future is not that secure. So debate and discuss about the human cost of not allowing people to access those rights, or helping them facilitate to reclaim or claim their rights. It's So I would call upon all of you to basically see on all these issues from a human rights perspective, from a human cost perspective, and also how the ongoing real world issues like climate change interacts with the situation of displacement. How our climate crisis is going to be impacting people and their situation. A small a small grazing ground which is shrinking somewhere in middle of Africa can cause a conflict between two countries and lead to displacement. Somewhere where the water resource is shrinking can lead to a conflict and lead to displacement. Where the island is going to sink, or is it at a risk of being sinking, it will lead to people getting displaced. How do you handle such displacements? How do you tackle those displacements? Because is the generation which is basically your generation who would have to face that when you'll grow up. So how do you solve those issues? Try to look at those issues from a different lens, because something is not working. Something is not working. Wars are still ongoing. Conflicts are escalating. You have more and more displacements coming up. 80 million people are displaced globally. Something is not right. 80 million displacement is the largest displacement which has happened in the history of UNHCR. We were established in 1951. Until now, this is the largest number of forcefully displaced people who are present across the globe. And another issue I would basically suggest that the committees discuss is the whole issue of responsibility sharing. Because most of the refugees basically seek asylum or seek safety are in the developing countries. More than 85% of such people who are in desperate need of help and assistance are in countries which themselves are developing. And refugees are a global responsibility. So discuss about the issues of how global mechanisms like Global Compact for Refugees, Global Refugee Forums could be utilized to help those countries who are basically bearing the brunt of hosting the refugees. Lebanon, 1 in 3 person is a refugee. Bangladesh, your own neighbor, nearly 1 million refugees in a small country like that. Turkey is hosting a maximum number of refugees. Germany is hosting a lot of refugees. Uganda, Somalia, How would you help those countries so that they are able, because hosting a refugee has a economic cost. Hosting a refugee needs some technical assistance. How are you helping those countries to bear that kind of a global responsibility? Think about those aspect also when you're talking about hosting refugees. And lastly, perhaps would also something like to highlight or share with you is this whole increasing idea of linking refugees with national security. Conflating your national security interest or a national security aspect with refugee protection serves no one, because refugees themselves are the victims of violations of their human rights. Refugees themselves are basically fleeing persecutions. Refugees themselves are fleeing the elements which are a threat to a national security. How can that group be a threat to your national security? And there are many, many ways to tackle national security and refugee protection, and they can go hand in hand. There are various systems that have been explored. So another thing I would encourage, all the committees to look into this whole idea of why national security is made such a big issue with refugee protection. Is it something to do with nationalism? Because it's the easiest way for your people to basically mobilize. Or is it to do with just simply fear of somebody who is foreigners, alien? So look into those issues, because those are the issues which are going to haunt us more and more in the coming days. And MUNs like this, where you have people coming up with very fresh minds, very different perspective. Look at all those issues from the point of view of solution, from the point of view of is there a different way to look at things? I would encourage you to read as much as possible. Like, give yourself as much as possible references to the text, but then apply your mind, apply your brain, and see that how can you take that discourse forward. I think that's when you do in this MUN, I'm sure it will be a great success. Do a lot of references, but your debates and your ideas should be your own thoughts. And they could be as crazy as possible. They can be as innovative as possible. It doesn't need to align with what you're reading. Your reading should inform that, but should not be a copy of what you say. So I hope I was able to share some of my thoughts of the issues as I see them. And 7 years in a UN's lifespan is as small as the lifespan of an Earth in the universe. So I may not be able to give you a very full picture, but definitely could share some of my little learnings and knowledge which I've acquired over that small span of time. I hope you have a very, very successful MUN, and best of luck to all the committees. Happy to take any questions if you have. If not, then maybe back to you, Molly.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and giving us such an elaborate understanding of the refugee crisis. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to invite our Director General, Mr. Chetan Gupta, to declare NITMUN 10 open.
Greetings. I'm Chetan, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our speaker, executive board members, delegates, and the entire secretariat along with the organizing committee. Thank you for joining us today for the 10th edition of NITMUN. Now, 10 years might be a decade to you, but for NITMUN, it has been a journey of ups and downs, of smiles and success, and of course, of incredible discussion and deliberation. But NITMUN is not a success because of that. It has and always been a stepping stone for hundreds of students who are new to the money circuit. Now, what differentiates us is the tenacity to learn about the weeping children of Afghanistan, to learn about a World War III situation right now that we might witness, and to learn about one of the darkest pages of our Indian history books. Because our extensive presence holds true meaning only when we strive to learn about the happenings around us. Now, with this spirit of learning, I declare NITMUN 10 open.
Thank you, Chetan, for your kind words. With this, the Literary Circle welcomes you all to NITMUN 10 and we hope you have an amazing conference ahead. If delegates have any queries related to the conference, feel free to reach out to the OC members, that is the admins in your respective committee WhatsApp groups. And now all delegates are requested to join their respective Google Meet links. Thank you.